Hey, so my name's John Alite. Back in my neighborhood, which was Woodhaven, it was nicknamed Death Haven. I was known as Johnny Alite, a little Johnny Alite, actually. I was a small guy. I was skinny, just a rumbling, tough, like little guy. But not anybody was going to intimidate anybody, actually. I was just a sports guy. I grew up around a family that was Albanian descent. Come from a communist country, and my grandfather became an immigrant here, moved my parents to downtown in Manhattan, Rivington and Delancey. My dad went to Seward Park Grammar School, and he dropped out in the third grade, being an immigrant. He was all over the street with guys like, in those neighborhoods back then was Vito Genovese, my uncle, Max, who was involved with the Detroit mob, married one of the boss's daughters. Their partner was Red Kelly, another friend of my father's, and Blackie Luciano was a Jersey guy that was involved in New York because his cousin was Lucky Luciano, and his name was also Charlie Luciano. Became my father's partner in the nightclub business, my uncle's partner in the card game business, three-card Monte in the Bronx. So I was introduced since a 5-year-old kid, 4-year-old kid, on the laps of some serious gangsters. And as I grew up in my neighborhood, which again was nicknamed Death Haven, I was pulled towards the mob world for a lot of reasons. Growing up in my era, it was the 60s. So in the 60s, it was during racial tensions. When we were first busing in black kids into the neighborhoods, and I went to school around the corner from my house. And I remember when those first kids got off the bus, how white kids jumped them. And my father always was against bullying. So, it was in the back of my mind, where do I stand during this? Even though you're a little kid, you're exposed quickly. And my best friend was black. He was Kevin Johnson. Another friend of mine that stayed with me at that time was black, Timothy Smith. And Timmy was just a good guy. He was a little bigger than me. Kevin was small guys. And we decided that day, when the fight started and broke out, we're not fighting anybody, we're just going to protect each other. And I think that's where my life started, when I thought about some of the things my father taught me. Which direction am I going to go in my life? Am I going to be weak? Am I going to be a follower? Or am I going to be the guy that's going to stand up and fight back? And he taught me to be the guy that's going to stand up and fight back. And as I was exposed to these gangsters, I started seeing the headstrong personalities also. So those were people I wanted to copy. And when you copy those guys, especially in the old days, that was the mob that people see today, and they believe the mob's the same. But it's evolved in a different manner now. Now it's almost white-collar criminals in different fields. Back then, it was mostly the guys that you see got involved were tough guys, always dressed in suit and ties. It was a different era. And they kind of taught us to be the same way. Be polite, be quiet, don't talk a lot, and kind of educate yourself in the street through them, which I started doing. And I was a big ball player, so I played a lot of ball. I was in the boxing gyms where gangsters were there also. And I grew up in a neighborhood that was filled with gangsters. So as the years were going on, I was used to seeing blood. I was used to seeing guys get hurt on the street in those days. I was used to seeing people get killed. And I was used to learning to keep my mouth shut because I was taught, if you see something, don't talk about it, walk away. So these were all things I was getting educated on as a kid. And not realizing myself, I was being developed and formed into being a violent guy myself. Without realizing it, it was a schooling like you do when you get educated in the school, grammar school, or anything else. I was being taught and being groomed by gangsters, whether my father realized it or not. Him, even though he wasn't a gangster, he was a gambler, he hung around them. He was giving me lessons in street life. At the same time, his friends had given me a lesson of how do I handle myself as a killer. And those words really weren't brought up to me, but it was kind of like when a child watches his father shave or get dressed, he starts copying his dad. So I started copying these guys, and I wanted to be like them. And I went to the gym, and I would see these guys in the gym. So I was used to, as a little kid, getting bloody noses and getting beat up. And blood was kind of a normal thing in my life, my brother's life, our cousins' lives. We'd see my father fighting a lot on the street. He was always fist fighting. So this became a normal way of our life, the violence. As I got a little older, in my 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, I started working in different places. And one of the places at about 13 or 12 years old was a deli, a couple blocks from my house, and it was on the way to my high school later on in years, Frank K. Lane High School, which was in Brooklyn, East New York. But that deli was the experience of really, you would think as a 12-year-old, it would be an experience of work ethics and learning to be an adult and earn your own way. Well, that was the opposite there. I got involved and I started understanding about drugs at that deli. I started meeting more gangsters that were using the payphones in the back. Next door to the deli was my girlfriend's father, who was a wise guy with the Lucchese family, and around the corner was her uncle, who was a bookmaker and a wise guy with the Lucchese family. Without realizing, I started running errands for them and picking up papers and dropping them off and running the money across the street. And at the same time, we got involved with friends of mine from the neighborhood who became gang members in gangs like 7 and 9. That was a big gang in our area at those days. And you're going back in those days when I grew up, when you had the Black Panthers, you had the crazy homicides, you had different groups of gangs that would fight over nonsense, really, over territories like you see on TV and the movies. And they'd wear colors, and then you had the bikers, and you had different crews around there. And my neighborhood had all this stuff going on at once, and I didn't want to be a victim. So I think not want to be a victim and understanding the violence in my neighborhood, I understood that I had to do things to present myself as a tough guy, somebody that nobody had to fool around with, nobody would want to fight, because of the connections I had with gang members, because of the connections I had with the mafia, and because I was violent myself and started becoming violent. So I started becoming little Johnny Alite, the good athlete, but little Johnny Alite that was almost had a split personality, that if something happened to me, if you turned your back on me, I'd hit you over the head with a baseball bat. And that reputation started following me slowly without realizing. And then I was getting mentored by different gangsters. A guy, Ronnie Martino, that was a Lucchese guy, known with a knife, did a lot of stabbing, and he would be teaching me the street at the same time. So my education kept evolving between different street guys, friends of mine that, peers that, were out. They were pretty dangerous guys at themselves. So at young ages, these guys started doing shootings, killings, robberies. I had an older cousin that was doing the same thing, Patsy Adriano. Later on, his son started staying with me, and we're out and he's doing the same thing, following me. So you're part, what I say, of a zip code. You grow up in a zip code, and your life is basically in one direction because of the area you grow up in. You need to be a strong individual to change yourself from the norm of that neighborhood. And I think the problem is most of the kids in these neighborhoods do what I do. We take the easy route out to make money, to develop ourselves financially, to get out of those neighborhoods, to get out of those hoods that we would call. And we get involved with the wrong type of people that are making fast money, people that have the power in the area, and the people that have the ability to go out and make a big dollar, a big buck all at once, instead of going to work and doing it the right way. And once you're exposed to some of the things that I started getting exposed to, the money, the power, the ability for people to bring you things to make money, because now they know that you're involved with different people. So you're involved with little things that we were doing at the time. Hijackings at Kennedy Airport with trucks and swag, and then some of the drug dealing at a smaller level, and later on you get to a bigger level. Obviously, like anything, you got to start at the beginning and you work your way up. And as I'm staying with these street kids, I'm also involved with the boss of our neighborhood of the Gambino family, which was the Ruggiano family. Fat Andy Ruggiano, who was a made member and straightened out by Albert Anastasia and Murder Inc. in the mid-50s, 54, I believe. When he becomes the boss in our neighborhood, I'm staying with his sons. They're my baseball coaches. They're boxing with me up at the gym. And they're giving me a new schooling of the street. And as I keep developing relationships, because in the street you need relationships to survive, to make money, to be respected, and to get a reputation, along with the brains to make money, which I had, and then the ability to go out and hurt people, kill people when it's necessary, when you yourself morally believe it's deemed to kill somebody or hurt somebody, or when you get an order from one of these guys I'm speaking about, whether it's Fat Andy Ruggiano, whether it's his son, whether it's the next mob boss, or whether it's one of my father's guys that he stayed with. But you start understanding the norm is to wake up out of bed in the morning, you put your feet on the floor and say, what direction of crime am I committing today? It's not where am I going today, it's where you're going to make money today, who you're going to have to hurt today, who you're going to have to kill. And that just became a normal thinking pattern for me. And I believed everybody was doing what I was doing in that world. I was a little naive to think that when I'm watching these gangsters, I thought they were all Al Greco's. Al Greco's a North Jersey guy that was very powerful, killing machine, and a friend of my father's. So when I'm seeing these guys, I'm believing these guys are doing what all mobsters are doing, but it's far from the truth. You have a handful of killers, you have a handful of money makers, and the rest are sheep. They're just following along. As I'm getting older, I start getting involved more and more on a serious level, and I start using weapons more on a serious level, and I become. They start nicknaming me different things during those days. They nicknamed me Go-Go because I was always on the run for making money. They nicknamed me Spanky. They nicknamed me Arnold for Arnold Schwarzenegger always fighting in the street. And they nicknamed me the names that really started sticking was Jesse, meaning Jesse Burke for shooting guns. So a crew of my friends started coming up with these nicknames for me, and then later on it was the sheriff because I was shooting a lot of people. So they said when I came into the neighborhood, they knew I was going to, they used to joke about the OK Corral shootout. So they knew I was going to come and become a shooter. And as you buying into your own bullshit and reputation, you start reacting what everybody expects you to react. In other words, sometimes maybe I would have talked a little more than I did, but now that my reputation is about violence, fighting, hurting, stabbing, batting, shooting, I started following suit with it and kept that reputation going. When I walked in, people feared me. They knew I didn't have to come in with a crew. They knew I'd come in by myself, whether it's in a restaurant, whether it was in a diner, a movie theater, a gym. If I wanted to get somebody, I just would go get them. And I'd start shooting them or stabbing them or batting them, piping them, whether it was on the beach. I've committed violence probably almost any location you can imagine. You start becoming somebody else. As a kid, I was known as being a good, quiet kid. As I aged and I started developing this reputation, I became Johnny Alite, the gangster. Johnny Alite, the killer. Johnny Alite, the collector, the enforcer. And you start losing your identity. You start forgetting who you really were. And, you forgot about the nice guy that was the baseball player, full-ride scholarship ball player, guy that passed the Series 7. I wasn't really a school person. I didn't go to school much. I did as a ball player. I was a captain of my baseball team, played 4 years varsity. But that guy was somewhere in the shadows now. And the new guy, Johnny, was the dangerous gangster. The guy that crews on the street all knew. The guy that people knew made a ton of money in the drug business, sports business. And I developed a reputation as a guy that gangsters would want to go to. So if they had a problem, they'd ask me, can you go do this for me? Can you help me with that? Whether it was our crew, which was the Gambino family, but I had relationships outside of that. Guys like Frankie Burke, Jimmy Burke's son was my good friend, and he was involved with the Lucchese family. I had uncles on my in-laws' side, there were captains in the Genovese family. So I had a wide range of friends. Later on, the Colombo family, who had a ton of friends in the Colombo family that grew up with me. So you start getting a reputation and friendships develop as kids, because as kids, we're all just young kids. Some of us wild, some of us not. But each kid goes in a different direction. One of my friends became the president of the Hells Angels. My other friend became a boss in the Lucchese family. My other friend became a captain in another family. And as these reputations go and you're moving around, and I lived in several states, so I started to know the mob in Philadelphia, and I had relationships with then the concierge Ronnie Turchi in Philly, his son, other guys that were captains in that family that were friends of mine, some dead, some alive, the New North Jersey crew, Riggy's crew, so the Cavalcanti family. So I started having relationships with some of those guys. And as it's like anything else, if you work for Home Depot, you have general managers and managers in different stores that you become friendly with. You associate at Christmas parties or different things. And as a gangster, we did the same. And especially there's an important factor that's different is we're making each other big money. And that means there's a relationships where we protect each other or help each other if it lines our pocket. And as you build a reputation and as time goes by and you survive in the streets, you're also getting stronger on the streets. You're also well trusted on the streets. And you, unfortunately, in my case, I was more aggressive with a gun. And I believed guys were doing the same as me, like I said earlier, but I started realizing while people were talking about me that I had the name in our neighborhood. I had the name in New York of a guy that if you crossed me or if you did something I didn't like, you could get killed very easily by me or shot by me. And when I talk about this now, looking back in time, how I developed into this killing machine or the enforcer that everybody talks about, I look in the mirror and I says, "Oh, is that me really?" You know, I'm disgusted with what I became, and you can't go back on that. You know, it's part of your history now, and you say to yourself, "How do I make that better? How do I change my past?" And again, I try to redefine myself as a guy that was real in that life, and try to show the kids, young men, women that are breaking the law, like, don't buy into the rest of these guys. 95% of them tell stories, and their stories never include when they actually did something specifically. I try to talk very specific about incident after incident so the kids really know that I'm a legitimate guy telling you don't follow these guys. These bosses, these underbosses, captains, they're not doing the work you guys think they are. And as they tell their stories, you can see by the way they talk, they're always talking about other individuals. They're always bringing up stories about other gangs or other crews or other bosses or underbosses or captains and how they met them and where they met them. And they glorify the myth that people believe in. But they never tell the story of how was it when they went and got that gun? How was it when they got in that car? What were they thinking when they were going to kill this individual? How many times did they shoot him? Where did they shoot him? How many people witnessed it? How many people are alive today from it? How many people died? They don't tell it because they didn't do it. So you have a prime example that I talk about a lot is Sammy Gravano. He's a guy tells everybody he's good at killing. He's got 19 murders. He killed one. I believe he shot a gun twice. And if it's different than that, I'd love to sit down and hear about it from any of these guys. Very few of them do more than a couple of shootings in their lifetime. And they live off that reputation. The difference is they get away with it because the mafia has been exploited because of movies like The Godfather and Goodfellas and The Bronx Tale and, The Departed and State of Grace. I could go through all of them. American Gangster. So you have these glorified movies that aren't accurate at all. They're just movies. But the guys that are very dangerous, and there's some, is guys like myself that lose part of your soul doing that stuff. And, you're always going to get challenged. And I understand why I killed a lot of guys, shot a lot of guys, beat a lot of guys, stabbed a lot of guys. So I'm not the guy that's saying a lot of these guys didn't deserve it, but I'm the guy saying every time you do it, it's part of your soul goes with it. And when you look in the mirror today, you want to say to yourself, I like myself a lot more than I used to like myself. So I'm not going to take somebody's life again. I'm not going to hurt anybody again. And I'm going to try to show kids, don't do what I did because you're only hurting yourself. Forget about the guy that may have deserved it, or maybe not. But if you go that route, it's very hard to come back from it. And if you go that route, trust me, you're going to have days and nights that you suffer more than anybody can believe. And not just in prison cells, but in your room when you can't sleep at night, in relationships, because it all takes a toll on you and your mindset and your trust values of people and the ability to live just a decent life. It changes. So every time somebody does what I do with a gun or a stripper on a dance pole, you can relate it. When they give up a moral bound for some of the things they do for money, a piece of them is taken away from them, whether they realize it or not. You start believing in a life of loyalty as a kid that develops you to the point where I'm a good machine. When my bosses or the people I'm involved with ask me to kill or shoot somebody or hurt somebody, I fully believe in that life as if I'm an American soldier saving the heart of this land. It's completely opposite. It's treachery. There is no loyalty. And when I watch guys, and I've named them over the years, bosses like Joe Messina wearing a wire from the Bonanno family, or I watch Gas Pipe from the Lucchese family who cooperated, the underboss, or you watch guy from the Lucchese family, Al Diarco, who one of the bosses cooperates, or you watch a guy like Sammy Gravano that's cooperating, or you watch John Gotti Jr., John Gotti's the boss's son, who become an active boss, meeting the FBI and cooperating, or you watch Whitey Bulger on the Irish side out of Boston, he's cooperating, guys from Philadelphia that were cooperating. Leonetti and different fellas that were cooperating with the Philadelphia mob. Chucky Porter in Pittsburgh. I mean, I could go through all the bosses for everybody and captains and different people and made guys. They're all spilling their guts and nothing against these guys, but they're selling a dream to young kids. And at the end, they're all telling everybody the truth. They're saving themselves. And that's life. People save themselves first. They save their family first. And that's a reality of anybody that's buying into anything different. These guys are living proof, the guys that are alive, that their lives come before anybody else's in the mob or anywhere else, and their families. And this is normal. People that buy into saying this glorification of something that doesn't exist. And while I was on the run, and I went on the run, for people that don't know, I was in trouble, and they were looking for me for a RICO case with murder, shooting, stabbings, robberies, armed robberies, drug dealing, bookmaking, every gamut of crime you can think about. When I was there, the whole Bonanno family flipped. They were cooperating. You had the Gambino family flipped, and they were cooperating. And you had Gotti's son that went in and was cooperating. So, am I going to blame these individuals trying to save their lives? Not really. As I look back, you move on with your life and you say, yeah, we were all naive to believe that our life was worth losing for people that we don't like, our enemies. And, you look at it and you just got a better understanding that you understand why these guys are cooperating. You understand why they cooperated against me. They had pressure on them and they folded in the cards. And in reality, when you look back as an older individual and not as a kid and naive, you say, this is basically human nature. If you're drowning in the ocean, a guy or a mother will save their child first and not themselves. But besides that, they're not going to risk their lives for anybody else. They're going to save their children and save themselves and move on and move on with their lives. They're not going to go and say to their kids, okay, goodbye, I'm going to die today. so I can save some stranger or somebody, especially somebody that doesn't like them, or somebody that's involved in an organization. It doesn't happen, and that's why this belief of the street world is just total fantasy by anybody that doesn't ever live it. Anybody that really lived it or was really violent in it and really understood the way it works, it's just a treacherous life that's a dead end. And hopefully I'm at a point where I'm saving a lot of kids' lives, or at least some. And that's my goal at this point in my life. After everything that's happened to me, I spent 2.5 years in a Brazilian prisons, 3 different ones, death camps, inhuman conditions, no different than concentration camps and those kind of styles. Advocate groups were never allowed in the prisons I was in. Guys' heads were chopped off and dozens were killed during some of the riots. And then I came back to the States and I did another, 15, 16 years here in prisons all across America, from county jails to state holdovers to federal prisons. So I'm a guy that's used to prison. I'm a guy that's been stabbed up. I'm a guy that's been run over by cars. I'm a guy that's been baseball batted and piped, and I'm a guy that's been shot. So I'm talking out of experience. I didn't just give it, I got it. And there was many plots to kill me, a dozen, more or less, probably more. There's probably tons of them I don't know about. There's shootings, the guys try to shoot me on times when I did get shot, and shot times they missed me. But this is no way to live life. Don't buy into the nonsense of the street, the mob, the loyalty. Be respectful to yourself. And then this way you can respect the rest of the world and your family and your kids and your future. That's the most important thing for you.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate it.